Kaieteur Radio, keeping you informed.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Burbies 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
Hello and welcome to your news at noon right here on Kaieteur Radio. I am Kevin Smith. These are the top stories we are tracking. Oil companies robbed Republic of Congo $64 million in 2 years by overstating costs. Small team cannot adequately review Payara FDP in a few months, says Associate Professor Dr. Blackman. And a $25 million Prado for Trevor Ben lands and surveys used staff to value vehicle, and $250 million unaccounted for from SLED program. Meanwhile, Windsor Estate developer returns 30 acres of Ogle lands to NISIL. Stay tuned to stay informed.
Digital, there with you.
Welcome back to your news at noon. Before we get to the news in detail, let's get to the front page comment brought to you by Kaieteur News. We need to stop cheating ourselves. Everybody is profiting from Guyana's oil. God bless Guyana, where anyone touching our oil prospers. The downturn in the global economy is forcing oil companies to cut costs and downsize their operations. Profits, in many cases, are expected to decline over the next few years. Not so with Hess, which has a 30% share in the Stabroek block. The company is projecting a 10% growth in income on the basis of its undertakings in Guyana. It is bragging about the bounty it will receive because of the high quality and low-cost oil from Guyana. While companies like Hess are increasing their income and shareholders' value, Guyanese being given crumbs for the exploitation of their resources. It is for this reason that we repeat for the umpteenth time our demand for a better deal for our oil. The exploitation of our wealth cannot leave us hungry and hurting while the foreign companies are enriching themselves at our expense. We cheat ourselves when we refuse to rebuke our political leaders for remaining slothful when it comes to renegotiating flawed agreements, or when we do not demand that they seek a fairer deal for the exploitation of our resources. We must begin to demand more from our leaders. We must insist on a more equitable deal for our oil resources so that, just like Hess, we too can prosper. And now we move on to the news in detail. Former petroleum advisor to the government of Guyana, Dr. Jan Mangal, once said that the oil industry is a highly corrupt industry at every level because of the billions of dollars involved. Oil companies tend to do whatever is necessary to maximize the profits to their shareholders, even if it means abusing the ignorance or lack of capacity of their host government. The Republic of Congo was rudely reminded of this a decade and a half ago when it contracted independent firms to audit the costs handed to the government by oil companies. ENI had a total for 9 permits. The firms produced 13 audit reports for 2004 and 2005, which showed that the companies had overstated their costs by $127 million. In the case of Guyana, ExxonMobil intends, along with its Stabroek Block partners, to recover billions of US dollars in costs from the development of several oil fields. Its capacity to audit is virtually nowhere, yet the country is rapidly approving projects. And moving on, when it comes to the petroleum industry, several stakeholders have stated that they will be looking to see if the Irfan Ali government will demonstrate that it is capable of ensuring that a sound regulatory framework is in place. In fact, Dr. Terence Richard Blackman, a member of the Guyanese diaspora and an associate professor of mathematics, noted that the matter of robust regulation raises its head when one considers the approval the government is expected to provide for ExxonMobil's Payara field development plan. Dr. Blackman recalled that the Department of Energy has, for more than 7 months, been engaged in a review of the plan alongside UK firm Bayface Oil and Gas Consultants. Dr. Blackman reminded that the Ali government had decided to review the work already undertaken by Bayface. He went on to say that it is clear that a small team cannot adequately re-review the oil development plan for an undertaking such as Payara over a few months. In other news, Commissioner of the Guyana Lands and Survey Commission, Trevor Benn, has come out defending his purchase of a 2016 Toyota Land Cruiser Prado for $2.5 million from his workplace 3 days before the March 2nd elections. According to the Commissioner yesterday, competent persons at the Commission calculated the depreciation costs, which brought the price down from an estimated purchase value of $25 million to $2.5 million. Ben insisted that the Commission paid $11 million for the 2015 SUV, which was registered in late 2016. He did not include the value of such a vehicle if taxes and duties were to be calculated, which could see final costs over $25 million. The Commissioner threatened a lawsuit and called for a retraction. In other news, according to the Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, Nigel Dharamlal, some $250 million from the Sustainable Livelihood and Entrepreneurial Development Program remains unaccounted for. Dharamlal indicated to the body that an investigation will be launched to probe all of the spending conducted by the program under the APNU-AFC, as he added that many of the opposition side are going to face prosecution. He even reminded the committee that executives of the former government benefited from the initiative, including the former Director of Sports and current Opposition Chief Whip Christopher Jones. The SLED program was set up in 2015 after the coalition took office. And moving on, the developer of the Windsor Estate gated community on the east bank of Demerara has rescinded the sale of a 30-acre plot of land at Ogle, east coast Demerara. The land to Navigant Builders was controversially sold without the transaction being completed by NISIL earlier this year. Several plots of such lands were sold to developers with questions raised over the timings as the March 2nd elections were nearing. Yesterday, Navigant Builders explained that, as the public is aware, immediately after the elections, it announced that it was postponing plans to continue its Ogle development project. It cancelled all payments to NISIL. You are tuned into Kaieteur Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM, and this is your news at noon. Coming up after the break, Guyana beefs up presence at Venezuelan border after army and police ranks come under fire. Alleged Ponzi schemers out on bail. West Demerara nurses join in protests for risk allowance and other issues. And Winston Felix says PPPC sole source birth certificates. We only continued. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. Let us continue with the news. Patrolling GDF ranks and the GPF on Wednesday came under fire in the Cuyuni River in Region 7, reportedly by a notorious Venezuelan gang. According to the GDF, the ranks were conducting a routine joint patrol in the Cuyuni River when shots came from the Venezuelan shore, allegedly by the notorious Sindicato gang members. The gang has been terrorizing persons on both sides of the border, including minors, demanding payments for safe passage. However, the ranks returned fire. None of the ranks was injured in the process. While the GDF is looking into measures for a resolution, Guyana and Venezuela are currently before the International Court of Justice over a large part of the Essequibo region that Venezuela is claiming. Due to the increase in attacks in the Cayuni River, allegedly by the Sindicato gang members, there has been an increase in army and police presence. In other news, alleged Ponzi scheme operators Yuri Garcia Dominguez and his wife Atika Ishmael were yesterday released on bail. The duo appeared in the Vigilance Magistrates Court before Magistrate Melissa Mittelholzer. They had appeared in the Sparendam Magistrates Courts weeks ago and refused bail on a number of charges. However, we were told they were granted bail on Monday, September 21st at Sparendam Court to the tune of almost $4 million. They posted the bail at Vigilance Court yesterday. Attorney at law Dexter Todd confirmed that his clients were granted bail. Garcia Dominguez, a Cuban national who became Guyanese in June, and his wife Atika Ishmael are charged for obtaining billions of dollars under false pretense out of the pockets of 17,000 plus Guyanese. And moving on, nurses at the West Demerara Regional Hospital have joined in protest action for risk allowance, adequate personal protective equipment, and for their pay to be remitted on time. The nurses stood with placards in the vicinity of the West Demerara Regional Hospital yesterday, some 12 hours after health workers at the Mackenzie Hospital in Linden hosted a similar protest exercise over the same issues. As it relates to their salaries and the availability of personal protective equipment, the nurses said that their last pay package was released 31 days ago. One nurse noted that as a frontline health worker, without risks, benefits, and adequate equipment, she feels absolutely undervalued. Meanwhile, Don Gardner, second vice president of the Guyana Public Service Union, who was also present at the picketing exercise, said that the union is in full support of calls for risk allowances to be paid to not just nurses, but healthcare workers across the board. And moving on, former Minister of Citizenship Winston Felix has revealed even more details regarding the birth certificate transaction between the former APNU-AFC administration and their party executive Lawrence London, who was at the time defending his party's decision to retain their own executive for a job, stated that London's company, Universal Procurement Services Incorporated, would have printed over 500,000 birth certificates for the government from 2016 to 2020, raking in millions of profits. The former minister even went on to state that it was the current PPPC government that had begun the sole sourcing of birth certificate, in fact carrying it on for 15 years. It was this that Felix stated that when APNU-AFC assumed office in 2015, they had only taken a decision to continue that practice. Felix's statement followed after the Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance, Gail Teixeira, during her budget presentation, stated that the coalition had awarded $13 million to a barely discernible Florida-registered company. In other news, the Ministry of Education has expressed dissatisfaction with the grades some students received in certain subject areas at the C2nd Cape. They have since posed questions regarding the matter to CXC, demanding a regrading of the examinations. According to the ministry yesterday, Minister Priya Manik-Chand has reached out to the registrar of CXC, raising concerns over the poor grading system and discrepancies highlighted by many teachers, parents, and students all across Guyana. Ministries of education in countries like Antigua and Barbuda, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and St. Lucia have also made a call for an urgent probe into the results. Yesterday, students of Queen's College and the Bishop's High School joined in solidarity to demand answers for the conflicting results received. The time is now 12 hours 16. Stay tuned. Coming up next is your COVID-19 update. And now for your COVID-19 update. The number of worldwide coronavirus cases, according to Worldometer, has reached 32,505,611, with deaths at 989,211. Recovery cases has reached 23,993,396. Guyana yesterday recorded 2 new COVID-19 deaths, taking the total death toll to 73. With a new average of 2 deaths recorded per day, Guyana's COVID-19 death toll may soon surpass 100. The deceased are 2 elderly persons, a 64-year-old male from Region 8 and a 94-year-old female from Region 9. The Ministry of Health yesterday announced that 44 new cases of the virus have been recorded, taking the total number of confirmed cases to 2,597. According to the ministry's daily dashboard update, there have been 1,483 cases of recoveries. The ministry's newly revised dashboard does not feature the number of persons in institutional isolation, institutional quarantine, approved home isolation, and the number of persons in the ICU. However, they did state that a full version of the dashboard will be posted on Saturdays. And coming from CNN, the US is still in its first COVID-19 wave and should be prepared for the challenge of fall and winter, says Dr. Anthony Fauci. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention ensemble forecast now projects there will be up to 226,000 coronavirus deaths in the United States by October 17th. And Poland and Czech Republic saw new record numbers of COVID-19 cases identified as cases throughout Europe continue to spike. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization warned that more than 80% of cases of COVID-19 in America could be asymptomatic.
And that's the news of the moment. Remember to get the full details of these stories, pick up a copy of the Kaieteur News. And don't forget, you can catch us on the MyTuner app as well as the Radio Garden app. You can also keep up to date by liking our Facebook page at Kaieteur Radio and subscribing to our YouTube channel, Kaieteur Radio Livestream. Oh, also catch our stream at www